Hey guys, how you doing? I'm here showing you how to remove the front struts on a 2008 Toyota Camry. This will be the same procedure for any 2006 through 2011 Camry. Obviously you need to remove the struts if they're going bad and you want to replace them. You can go about replacing them two ways. You have to take the strut out, and then you can go on ahead, and the normal way would be to compress the springs with the spring compressor and remove the top portion of the strut and then put in a new, and then using the same spring you just put in a new strut. Or you can do what I'm doing today, which is just to remove the old assembly entirely and then just put in a brand new assembly that's already complete. I recommend doing that because it's much faster, and they really don't cost much more than a normal strut just by itself. So this is the piece that I will be putting in right here. It's just an entire assembly, comes complete. As I said, these are much faster. You simply take out the old one here and then just bolt this new one in. As I was saying before, if you don't want to do that, after you remove the old one, you'll need to have a spring compressor so you can compress the springs here on the side and then remove this top portion. There's a little, looks like a 19mm bolt up here that you'll need to remove in order to remove this top hat off. Then you go ahead and slide your new strut in and reattach this top hat. So yeah, we'll go on ahead and get right into it. You'll need, tool-wise, obviously you'll need to jack the car up, put it on jack stands. You'll need a 22mm wrench. I'm sorry the lighting is kind of bad, but there's a 22mm bolts that's what holds the bottom of the strut on. There's two of them, so you'll need a wrench and a socket to take those off, as well as some type of breaker bar because they're going to be on pretty tight. You'll also need a 12mm socket to remove the brake line that's right here, and then you'll also need a 18mm socket to remove the sway bar link. And then also when you move up to the top into the engine bay, those are 14mm bolts that are holding on the strut to the top of the car. So first thing you want to do, I'm going to see if I can adjust my camera here to get a better angle for you. The next thing you want to do now is to remove the 18mm nut here that holds the sway bar end link on to the bottom of the strut. There should be, now in most cases there will be a recess right here in the middle of the stud where you can stick in an Allen. That way you can hold the stud in place while you loosen the nut. Because most of the time when you try to loosen these nuts, the stud will just spin around in a circle and you won't actually be loosening anything. So in some cases they'll have a recess right here in the middle, which this one does not have. Or in the other case, if you look in the back behind the plate here, there'll be a spot where you can get a wrench on, to that way you can hold the stud while you loosen this up. This car has aftermarket sway bar end links, so I'm not sure exactly what size would be on your guys' cars. Probably a 14mm, maybe a 17mm possibly, but you can always just use an adjustable wrench. Something like this will work fine. Or in the case of mine, it's a 5/8 nut on the back. So I'm going to use a 5/8 nut and then an 18mm on the front to loosen it up. Then you can go ahead and just push the stud out of the hole there. You can just let it hang there to the side, that's fine. Now what you'll be left with is removing the large 22mm bolts here on the bottom. These are on here pretty tight. I recommend having at least some type of breaker bar, something like this. This is just a smaller one. They make really long ones as well. But if you don't have a long bar, I suggest getting something like this. This is the handle off of my jack, to where I can slide I can slide this in here to gain more leverage if I need to. but you'll need something because these are on fairly tight. So you can go on ahead and loosen both of them up and remove the nuts off of both of them. You will need a 22 millimeter on the other side over here to hold it to stop it from spinning. After you've broken them loose, you can go ahead and just switch to a normal ratchet to finish taking them off. We'll be taking the one off the bottom. Go ahead and take the one off the top now. Okay, now is where the part where you can grab a hammer and hit the actual bolts out here. You just hit them out, tap them lightly. You don't have to tap them really hard, or your risk damaging the threads. I just tapped them really lightly and they should come out. If you're going to go ahead and remove both of them, keep in mind that this whole brake knuckle assembly here is going to fall down a little bit. So you can have a jack underneath it to help hold it up. Which is what I like to do, though, is that when this does come out, the whole brake rotor assembly will have a tendency to fall out towards you. It will stop at a certain point, either by the brake line holding it in place, or the lower ball joint will only have so much flex. The problem with letting it come all the way out is that you risk pulling the joints out of your axles if you come out too far, and those can be a pain to get back into place correctly. So just keep that in mind as you're pulling out these bolts, that try to keep the rotor as perpendicular to the ground as possible, or as vertical as possible. I know it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be hard to do so. If you find that you need to use some zip ties to hold it up in a place somewhere, then by all means do that. So go on ahead and remove the bolts out. You will find that if you push on the top of the rotor, it's pretty easy to pull the bolts out. But you can see already how the rotor is already wanting to fall towards me like so. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my jack and support the bottom of the rotor. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the other bolt. Now once you've got both bolts out, you can go on ahead and push this strut away from the knuckle assembly, pretty much just to get it free. See, now you have it entirely free here, it's loose. Now what you'll need to do is to move up to the engine bay, where there will be 3 14 millimeter bolts that are holding on the shock. Here, let's see if I can show them to you guys. These 3 bolts right here, 1, 2, 3. You'll go ahead and loosen these up and remove them all. When you get to the last one, if you have a helper, you can have them hold the shock so it doesn't fall down to the ground, or they're pretty close to each other to where you can hold one with your left hand, let's say, while you're loosening up the last one over here so that you can hold it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, now you just need to grab your new strut assembly, or however you did it. If you just replaced the strut, either way you need to grab the whole assembly, and your goal is to get the top 3 holes lined up into the engine bay, so that way you can get the nuts started up there, so that way you can it'll support itself up there. So you go ahead and maneuver it back into place. Then you go ahead and start a couple of the nuts up top, so that way it's holding itself up. There you go. Now I got the nuts there, and this is now supporting itself in place. So while this is loose, go ahead and just leave it loose for now. You're going ahead and try and get the knuckle here. Now you want to go ahead and try to make sure you can get the knuckle back into this part here with the 222 millimeters. Go ahead and stick that back into the strut now, and feed the bolts back into there. So there, I got one in right now. It's easier to get the top one in and then go ahead and follow up with the bottom one. Okay, so now they're both into place. You can go on ahead and reinstall the nuts. Now you can go on ahead and remove your jack out of the way because everything is supported now. And now what you can do is to go on ahead and tighten up the three 14 millimeter nuts that are on top in the engine bay. That way you'll be done in the engine bay. You won't have to do anything else, and you can focus your attention on the on the rest of the bolts and nuts down here. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the engine bay bolts now. Okay, now that you've got the top tightened up, you can go ahead and focus your attention on tightening up the two 22 millimeter bolts. You'll need to use your ratchet to start them up. You can go ahead and tighten them both up with a ratchet and then follow it up with the breaker bar. Just get them as snug as you can. They're pretty strong bolts. They shouldn't break or strip or anything like that. But obviously you know, you're only so strong, so you can only get them so tight. And switch the breaker bar now so that I can go ahead and finish tightening them up all the way. Okay, once you've gotten those tightened up, you can go on ahead and reinstall the sway bar end link that you have. You just simply take and push it back here, just push it back into the hole it was in, and pretty much tightening it up is the same process as when you removed it. You'll need to use the wrench in the back to hold it while you tighten up the front part of it. Okay, now that's tightened up. Now you can go on ahead and reinstall the brake line back into the hole, as well as the ABS bracket. You just simply pop that back into place where it was on the strut, like so. ABS is here, just pops right on. And then you can go on ahead and put the ABS bracket here back where it belongs, along with the brake line and the 12mm bolt that you took out. And there you have it. Everything is now tight and back together, and you're good to go. That's pretty much it. If you have any comments or questions, please ask them in the comment section below. I'm free to answer any questions you guys may have. If this is your first time to the channel and you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and if you'd like to see more automotive repair content, definitely hit the subscribe button on your way out. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.